Sara Sharif's story is one that shakes us to our core. She was a 10-year-old girl whose life was meant to be filled with laughter, discovery, and love. Instead, her life ended abruptly under tragic and disturbing circumstances, leaving her family, community, and the public grieving and searching for answers. Sara Sharif was born on the 11th of January 2013. Her father is Irfan Sharif, a Pakistani Muslim taxi driver who moved to the UK in 2001. Her mother is Olga, née Domin, a Polish Catholic. Growing up, she had dreams like any other child, dreams of friendship, learning, and exploring the world. Those who knew her describe her as bright, inquisitive, and creative. She loved drawing, reading, and playing with her friends, and she was known for her kindness to those around her. However, Sara's early life was not without its challenges. Her parents separated when she was young, and this separation brought with it the usual difficulties faced by children in divided families. Sara's mother was initially her primary caregiver, providing her with a sense of stability and love. However, her father, Irfan Sharif, remained an influential figure in her life, even as the family dynamics became more complex. Custody arrangements often placed Sara in the middle of ongoing disputes. Her mother expressed concerns over her daughter's well-being, fearing that Sara's father's household was not a safe environment. As legal proceedings continued, custody of Sara was awarded to her father, a decision that deeply affected her mother and, ultimately, Sara herself. Sara's family, particularly her mother, worried that the change in her home life would lead to difficulties for a young girl trying to navigate complex emotions in an unfamiliar setting. In this new environment, Sara lived not only with her father and stepmother, but also with extended family members. This crowded household introduced different routines and a stricter lifestyle, which friends and neighbors noticed was a significant departure from the life she'd known with her mother. Sara's world was changing rapidly, and for a child, such transitions can be difficult to process. Over time, she seemed to grow more withdrawn, with teachers noticing a decline in her usual brightness and enthusiasm at school. The custody battle between Sara's parents was emblematic of larger systemic issues surrounding child custody cases. Family court systems are designed to make decisions in the best interest of the child, but the processes can sometimes overlook signs of potential harm, especially when cases are complex. In Sara's case, the court's ruling placed her in an environment that, in hindsight, appears to have lacked the emotional support and safety she needed. Sara's mother struggled to accept the new arrangement, and it's believed that she voiced her concerns to friends, extended family members, and even social services. However, her worries about Sara's safety and well-being went largely unnoticed. This is a failure that echoes in many child custody cases, where concerns are raised but fall through the cracks of an overwhelmed system. Family and friends began to notice that Sara seemed increasingly isolated and distant, but with limited legal options, her mother felt powerless to intervene. Sara was homeschooled and made to wear hijab to conceal her injuries. Sara was burned with an iron, bitten, and had a plastic bag taped overhead. The events of August 10, 2023, remain deeply distressing and difficult to comprehend. On that morning, emergency services in Woking received a frantic call from Sara's father, Irfan Sharif. The nature of the call was alarming. He reported that his daughter was unresponsive and lifeless. Paramedics and police responded immediately, only to find Sara's lifeless body. Initial assessments revealed troubling signs of injury and trauma, sparking immediate concerns of foul play. The autopsy results showed that Sara's body bore signs of prolonged abuse. The investigation revealed injuries that pointed to a history of physical trauma, raising difficult questions about what Sara might have endured in her father's household. Her body showed indications of being physically hurt on multiple occasions, leading investigators to consider that her death might have been the tragic culmination of sustained harm. What made the situation even more complex was the discovery that her father, stepmother, and several other relatives had already left the UK by the time the investigation began. Just hours after calling emergency services, Irfan and his family had boarded a plane to Pakistan, leaving authorities in the UK struggling to piece together the events that led to Sara's tragic end. Sara's father, Sara Sharif, 42, her stepmother, Bainash Batul, 30, and her paternal uncle Faisal Malik, 29, are accused of carrying out a violent campaign of abuse before killing her on the 8th of August. A neighbor told police she heard a single high-pitched scream on the 6th of August 2023, 2 days before Sara's death. It lasted a couple of seconds and stopped suddenly. It sounded to her like the scream of someone in pain, and as she put it didn't sound good, the prosecutor said. Sara's death quickly became the focus of an international investigation. British police, realizing the severity of the case and the need to question Irfan and his family members, began working with the Pakistani authorities. A formal request was made to Pakistan's Federal Investigation Agency, or FIA, initiating an international manhunt for the Sharif family members involved. While the United Kingdom and Pakistan share a long history and strong diplomatic ties, they do not have an extradition treaty. This legal gap posed a significant challenge, as the UK could not demand the immediate return of the suspects for questioning. Instead, British law enforcement officials had to rely on diplomatic channels and mutual cooperation, a process that was both slow and filled with legal hurdles. Pakistani authorities faced pressure from both the UK government and the public to take action. The Sharif family had reportedly gone into hiding, moving from place to place to avoid detection. However, due to the high-profile nature of the case and the pressure from British authorities, Pakistan's police eventually managed to locate the family. The legal process, however, was far from straightforward. Although the Pakistani authorities were able to detain the family members, extradition remained a complicated matter, as Pakistani law does not allow for the automatic return of its citizens without extensive judicial review. As days turned into weeks, the investigation became not only about bringing those responsible for Sara's death to justice, but also about examining the flaws in international legal agreements that make cross-border cases so challenging to resolve. The public's reaction to Sara Sharif's death was one of profound shock and sorrow. In the days following the news, vigils were held across the UK, with many gathering to honor her memory and demand justice. Sara's hometown of Woking saw an especially large turnout, with mourners lighting candles, laying flowers, and holding moments of silence in remembrance of the young girl. The media covered the case extensively, with daily updates that kept the story in the public eye. Major news outlets ran investigative pieces on the family's history, interviewed neighbors who had heard arguments or seen unusual activity, and spoke to child protection experts about the systemic failures that may have contributed to this tragedy. Social media, too, saw an outpouring of grief and frustration. Hashtags calling for justice for Sara trended on multiple platforms, and online communities dedicated to child advocacy shared her story widely. Many used Sara's case to call for stronger child protection measures, voicing their concerns about the gaps in the current system that allowed children to fall through the cracks. Sara's case also reignited conversations about the role of social services in the UK. Reports emerged suggesting that there may have been warning signs, and some questioned whether social workers or other authorities could have intervened sooner. The situation exposed weaknesses in the system, with critics arguing that social services are often overwhelmed and under-resourced, making it difficult to thoroughly investigate every case. Sara's story, though tragic, underscored the need for reforms in child protection services to prevent similar cases in the future. The trial of Sara Sharif's father, Irfan Sharif, along with her stepmother, Bainash Batul, and uncle, Faisal Malik, is ongoing at the Old Bailey in London. The three face charges of murder and child neglect. Sharif's father, Irfan Sharif, her stepmother, Bainash Batul, and her uncle, Faisal Malik, were extradited to the UK from Pakistan in September 2023. Following their extradition, the three were promptly arrested upon arrival and charged with Sara's murder and child neglect. Their trial began at the Old Bailey, where they all pleaded not guilty to the charges. Sara Sharif's tragic case has brought renewed attention to the urgent need for stronger child protection laws, both in the UK and internationally. Advocacy groups across the country used her story as a rallying point, calling for reforms to ensure that children's safety is prioritized in custody cases and that early warning signs of abuse are not ignored. Child protection experts highlighted the gaps in the current system, arguing that social services often lack the resources needed to monitor children in high-conflict family situations. Many advocated for additional training for social workers, as well as increased funding for social services, to ensure that they have the capacity to respond effectively to cases of suspected abuse. Sara Sharif's story is a heartbreaking reminder of the importance of protecting children and addressing gaps in child welfare systems. Her life was cut short under tragic circumstances, but her story has left an indelible impact, raising awareness and calling for systemic change. By remembering Sara, we honor not only her memory but also the pressing need to ensure that no child suffers alone. As we conclude this in-depth exploration of Sara's life and the investigation into her passing, we hope her story will inspire positive change and a renewed commitment to safeguarding children everywhere.